Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with ADAM HOLZMAN. Thanks for joining us here, and thanks for playing this concert. So we're going to focus today on this incredible instrument that I guess came out late 90s, 1999, 2000, I believe?
The Voyager.
Yeah, the Voyager.
Yeah, sometime around the early 2000s, yeah.
So you're a long-time Mini Moog player.
From way back, yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, it was always the sound. It was clearly the sound you had to have for a young keyboard player in the early 70s, and mid 70s. I got my first Mini Moog in, I guess it was 1976, and it was one of the older models. But at that point, my heroes were already Patrick Moraz, Jan Hammer, Rick Wakeman, who all used the Mini Moog, quite a lot, and it had always had different character depending on who was playing it. I was just a fan of that sound, and my first hero was Ray Manzarek, the keyboard player from the Doors. And I grew up around the Doors, and it was a big part of my life. And Ray was my hero, and he is, in retrospect, he is really one of the great keyboard players in rock.
Most definitely.
And really influential, especially for me. And it's ironic actually, because I sometimes do a lot of bass stuff now with the Moog as well. And he did left-hand bass, of course, on that Fender Rhodes keyboard bass back in the day. So there's a connection there. But no, I was totally into keyboards, and I started playing, and I was playing boogie woogie and rock, and finally got into a little prog rock band, and I had a Gibson organ, actually, like Ray did back in the day, but it was kind of, it was sort of wheezy sounding. It was not a Hammond, and slowly started building up an arsenal over the years. But the Mini Moog was my first baby. I still have it. I still have the original one that I bought. It's serial number 6000, so it's somewhere in the middle of the first main batch. And you mentioned that story I told you when I first. I was first at Guitar Center. They first sold me. I wanted to buy a Mini Moog, and they sold me a Oberheim 2-voice, which had just come out. I forget what it was called.
I think it's just called Oberheim 2-voice.
Yeah, maybe, because then they got clever later with the OB1 and stuff like that. But I took it home, and I tried to like it, but it was not a Moog. And the salesman had done a real good, heave-ho on me, and I fell for it. But anyway, I brought it back to the store and said, look, this is not, he goes, okay, fair enough, you want a Mini Moog. So we went to the back room, and there's 6 Mini Moogs piled up in corner, all in boxes. He pulls one out, and it's got the ribbed reels. So it's ribbed wheels. So it's a little bit later than mine, when they had the corrugated. I think it was different manufacturer. Anyway, was that when it went to Norlin? Maybe it was.
Yeah, I think it was Norlin, like post-Musonics.
Right around
Norlin.
Anyway, there was something wrong with the modulation on that one. So took the next one out of the box. Another one with the corrugated wheels, and this time one of the oscillators wasn't, one of the switches wasn't working, or something like that. So I can't remember exactly. That one didn't work. Next one, some other small problem. Finally, we get to one, open the box up, and it's got the old nylon pitch wheels that are not corrugated. And the guy says, oh, wow, look at that, an older one. And I
take my money.
This is mine, yeah. I plugged it in, and of course it worked perfectly. Didn't have any of the glitches. And I still have that one to this day. And it sounds amazing. I put it side by side with the Voyager. And sometimes with the Voyager, you have to work a little bit to get close to the character that the old Mini Moogs just naturally have. But that said, there's nothing quite like that. The Voyager took the Mini Moog concept and basically brought it up to Star Trek level of flexibility. There's some patches in there that have your name on them, if I understand. They're floating around. They might be. I mean, this standard one is my lead patch. It's a very simple patch. It's just one square wave, one sawtooth wave. Not too much. Filter not opened up too much. Maybe
right
just
through.
The slightest release. but it just sort of sings and sits above. Oh, the other little trick I have is I have the volume go slightly louder as it goes up the keyboard.
Oh,
Those
okay.
are kind of subtle modulations. You see, my older Mini Moog naturally did that.
Oh,
and
isn't
so,
that interesting?
but I was able to program it with this using pot mapping.
Ah, okay, right.
And so you map the keyboard to volume 25%.
Ah, I see. So the
secret.
CV.
I gave away my secret. I can't believe it. All right. Well, you guys deserve it.
We can edit it out if you want.
No, it's okay. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that one, another sort of lead sound. A guy named Thomas Wolf in Germany came up with the basic patch. I did a few of my own tweaks, but that's a sound I use on a solo that I played on a Steven Wilson album, a song called Regret 9, and it's I've gotten a lot of compliments about the sound and that solo over the years, and so it's got. I have some after sound pretty sick.
So is there a little oscillator sync going on in there too?
It is oscillator sync. So oscillators 2 is slave to oscillator 1, and you can.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
You know, and so instead of doing this with my hand, I can do it with the aftertouch.
Oh, okay, right.
And then I have the doing modulation, and it's also hitting that a little bit. It sounds a little tweezy right now. Did I change something? Yeah.
There you go.
Weird.
Lower register. Evidence that you can compete with a guitar player.
Oh,
That's what's so great about these instruments.
That was Rick Wakeman said right from the very beginning. Finally, when the Moog came out, what did he say? It could cut through concrete.
Yeah.
When the Mini Moog came out, he finally had his. He was able to compete with the guitar for sure. I mean, I feel the same way. I totally understand that.
So when you got your original Moog, had you had some experience with one to understand the sound design potential that it had? Or did you just
I mean,
do what we all did?
you're talking about when back in the day. So I was just a teenager. The Mini Moog was all new to me. So I didn't. My Moog background is growing up with the Mini Moog. You know, when I was like, 18.
Oh, okay, perfect. So no prior experience. You bought one and just started learning how to design sounds with it.
I mean, yeah, I messed around with him in music stores and read a lot and stuff. You know, I had a clue, but it's still, so a few people, some slightly older keyboard players I knew showed me a few of the tricks. One of the biggest tricks was routing oscillator 3 to become LFO and use that for vibrato on the modulation wheel.
That's awesome.
And that was, I think, the first person that I heard do that was Patrick Moraz.
Right.
But I'm sure other guys had hit upon that before.
Yeah, that's a huge, to me, a necessity in Mini Moog playing is to have that
the pitch and mod
wheel.
thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. So, sound design-wise, moving from the original Moog into this, probably a fairly simple leap, but there are some differences in the Voyager that expand out the potential for sound drive.
Yeah, well, the huge one is you have a separate LFO, so you're not slaving up, but you can still use oscillator 3 as another LFO, but you have a separate LFO. So that gives you a lot of flexibility right there. Oscillator sync is not something that was available on the original Mini Moogs, and that was something I could never figure out how Jan Hammer was getting that sound. I thought he was doing something with the filter or something. I couldn't really tell. I learned down the road later that it was oscillator sync. He must have been doing that, I think, with Oberheim's because it wasn't easy to do on a Mini Moog.
Or
he had a customized.
Modded.
He had some mods going on. Yeah. Another big thing is the sample and hold as an option of modulation waveforms. I use sample and hold a lot for different things, for filter, sometimes for the good old
the classic
thing. But I mean that's just for an effect. But I like to sometimes do a slow sample and hold, hitting a filter just so it's shifting a little bit.
Just a little touch of it, right?
You can do all kinds of little subtle things with sample and hold. Really, really useful. And the last thing of the bullet points, I would say, would be the touchpad as being major different. You can do things in the touchpad that take you into a zone that is like This is not a normal.
Well, I think that's where the word Voyage comes in. Voyager comes in as that.
I'll show, this is so. I've got this right now. I have the touchpad. Well, let me put it this. Let me start again. When you get the patches and the factory patches, back, I guess this is not back when it was new. The touchpad was mostly routed to a filter. So you would hit a note and you would switch your hand around on the filter. I mean, switch your hand around on the touchpad and it would affect the filter. This you can route anything to the touchpad, and you can also choose a number of options for the gate to trigger the sound. So I have it right now, so the sound is actually being triggered when I touch it. The keyboard right now has actually been disabled. But what the keyboard will do is determine
set the note that's going to.
It'll set the, or in this case, it'll set the keyboard filter contour amount, because that's also a keyboard function.
That makes sense. So what about continuous variable waveforms? Is that something that you leverage and utilize?
Hang on one second.
Yeah, that's perfect. Classic.
See, that's not a normal synthesizer. And you get a modulation going, slowly getting faster.
That's like VCS3 territory right there.
What I love it is all the modulations go into audio zone, so you can really grind them out. Just that alone. Just use that as a background.
I could use that. I could listen to that for an hour.
Yeah.
I love these sounds.
It's got a real zone. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry, you were saying?
Continuous variable waveforms. I think that was a pretty interesting thing where you're...
Oh yeah, that you can, the knob, it's subtle. That's subtle. Pretty subtle. That's not the kind of thing that a listener is really going to hear so much. But it is cool that you can do that. And you know, it's also good to remind yourself that we're talking about, hey, 4 waveforms basically, as opposed to any, you know, average digital synth that's got 400. But
well, limitation breeds creativity in my mind.
Well, yeah, and it's also, this is, you know, especially when you use it more in conventional music things, I look at the Moog as a voice, as a trumpet, a voice in the orchestra, you know.
Absolutely.
One of the main character, it has a lot of character. And when I try to solo on something else, even good stuff, it's not even close to.
It really isn't.
So that's why it's always tough for me to travel without my Voyager. I would never put this through checked baggage, and so you know, you got to either ship it using something fancy like Rocket Cargo, or pray you can find Voyager on the other end.
Yikes. The original Mini Moog, from song to song, you had to change the settings.
Yeah.
Of course, in the Voyager, you have patch memory.
Oh yeah, right, of course, and MIDI.
But there's some benefit to forcing you to change the patch every time.
Yeah.
There's some benefit to having presets. Where do you fall in that range?
No, you know, I hate to say it, but I mean, like, I love the idea of, first of all, I own a Voyager old school. Okay. Which is awesome, and that sits in my home studio. And so that is, so I'm into the concept of slowly morphing from patch to patch, and when you're tweaking in the studio, that's what you're doing anyway. But I'll tell you, we're all spoiled now. But it was too late. By the mid-'90s, it was all over. You have to have patch memory for a gig. Unless you're going to use one sound all night, or unless you're very clever and you set up a patch that would radically change with a few small tweaks here and there as you go through the night, which is what I used to do with the Mini Moog. You know, you really need program memory. It's big. And it's also great to have MIDI too. Even though I don't use the MIDI function that much, sometimes I'll sequence a bass line or layer, or want to do layers or something like that. But it's great that it has MIDI also.
It's nice that keyboard it's really a polyphonic keyboard. You could use it via MIDI to control a polyphonic keyboard and play full. It really was that was a smart thing.
That's a very jazzy move of them to make it send MIDI polyphony.
And you can change whether the low note has priority or the high note has priority, so that gives you the ability to, you know, that lowest note in that
you're talking about when you're in normal solo mode.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. or last note has priority.
Yeah, last note is good too. Just because if you were using it with a
last note.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's why most people I think like the last note.
And if I didn't have that, I would go with the low note.
Low note,
that's
right.
more the
which is the traditional,
the more traditional
right.
thing. Yeah.
And do you find yourself? This goes with you every time you play, right? This is your primary
Every time
instrument.
I can bring it, it goes with me almost every time. It depends on the gig. I mean, if I'm, but yeah, most of the time, yeah.
All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about that turns you on about the Moog Voyager before we call it quits?
I mean, you know, it's a tough call, but you know, just like you know, a Fender Stratocaster or you know, I don't know. I don't want to go to, or you know, or a Selmer saxophone or something like that. I mean, it's, you know, it's a pure, iconic entity, and it's my voice. You know, pretty much.
Right on.
I mean, I think that I love playing piano. I love playing organ. I love playing solos on different keyboards and things like that. But if I had to narrow it down to one thing, it would be and also it would be the Voyager over the Mini Moog because of the touchpad and the sample and hold and the sync functions.
Certainly. Well, thanks so much for coming and talking with us today.
Thank you.
And thanks
man,
for doing this performance.
Man, thanks for inviting me to this amazing place.
It is pretty amazing,
to play
isn't it?
here, man.
Yeah. I mean, just look around, right?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's completely overwhelming.
It took me 3 times coming here before I could really fully grok what this place is all about.
Yeah, I'm going to leave here ungrokked.
Exactly.
But yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.